I want you to imagine something with me right now. Picture yourself standing at your mailbox, and your hands are trembling slightly as you hold that lottery ticket. Your heart is pounding so hard you can hear it in your ears. And in that moment, before you even check the numbers, something inside you already knows. Not hopes, not wishes, knows. That's not luck, my dear friend. That's divine law, responding to your command. You see, I've watched thousands of people pray for money, beg for abundance, plead with the universe for just one lucky break, and I'm going to tell you something that might shock you. Their very pleading pushes away what they desire most. Because the universe doesn't respond to begging, it responds to commanding. And there's a world of difference between the two that nobody ever taught you. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there are people who win repeatedly, not once, not twice, but again and again. People who seem to have some secret arrangement with fortune itself. And the world calls them lucky. But I'm here to tell you that luck is simply divine law that hasn't been understood yet. These people aren't special. They're not chosen. They're not more deserving than you. They simply know how to speak the language that the universe actually hears. I'm going to share with you 10 powerful ways to command lottery wins by divine law. But more than that, I'm going to show you how to completely transform your relationship with abundance. Because here's what I've learned after decades of watching miracles unfold in the most ordinary lives. You don't attract money by wanting it. You command it by becoming the kind of person who already has it in consciousness. The millionaires who win, who succeed, who seem to dance through life with golden horseshoes, they're not doing what you think they're doing. They've stopped chasing. They've started commanding. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how they do it, and more importantly, how. You can start doing it too, right now, in this very moment. Because the lottery ticket in your hand is not a game of chance. It's a mirror reflecting back to you exactly what you believe you deserve. Let me tell you about something that happened just last week. A woman came to me, tears streaming down her face, clutching a lottery ticket. She'd been playing the same numbers for 7 years. 7 years of disappointment. 7 years of asking me, why doesn't it work for me? And I looked at her, really looked at her, and I asked one simple question. What do you say to yourself when you buy that ticket? She didn't even hesitate. I say, I never win anything, but maybe this time will be different. There it was. The entire problem wrapped up in one sentence. She was speaking her defeat before she even had a chance at victory. Every single time she bought that ticket, she was programming her subconscious mind with the words, I never win. And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, simply agreed with her. You see, most people think the lottery is about picking the right numbers. But I'm here to tell you something that might sound absolutely wild. The numbers don't matter nearly as much as the consciousness behind the person picking them. I've watched people win with birthdays, with random quick picks, with numbers they saw in dreams, and I've watched people lose with mathematically calculated systems, with lucky numbers blessed by fortune tellers, with every strategy under the sun. The difference was never in the numbers. The difference was always in the person. When someone who expects to win buys a ticket, they're not hoping, they're not wishing, they're not desperately clinging to a fantasy. They're simply claiming what they already know belongs to them. There's a certainty in their energy, a calm assurance that says, this or something better. That phrase right there, this or something better, that's one of the most powerful tools you'll ever learn. Because when you release your stranglehold on exactly how your good must come to you, you open the floodgates for miracles you couldn't have even imagined. You see, most people miss their miracles because they're so busy dictating terms to the universe. They say, I want this job, in this company, starting on this date, with this exact salary. And when it doesn't show up precisely as ordered, they declare the whole thing a failure. They completely miss the better position that was trying to come through, the one they didn't even know existed. I've watched this happen more times than I can count. A woman desperate to marry a particular man, blind to the fact that he was entirely wrong for her. She prayed, she affirmed, she visualized, all while clutching onto her specific picture. And the universe, in its infinite wisdom, had to let her learn the hard way. 2 years into that marriage, she finally understood why her inner voice had been whispering no the entire time. But here's what's beautiful. When you add this or something better, You're acknowledging that there's an intelligence far greater than your limited human perspective. You're saying, I know what I want, but I'm wise enough to admit I might not know what's truly best for me. This isn't about being passive or wishy-washy. It's about being spiritually mature. It's about understanding that your job is to plant the seed to declare your intention, to claim your good, but the how and when? That's not your department. Think of it like ordering from a divine menu. You get to choose the meal, but you don't get to march into the kitchen and micromanage the chef. You don't get to specify which pan they use or exactly what temperature the oven should be. Your job is to place the order with absolute conviction that it's on its way, and then trust the preparation process. Now, I can already hear some of you saying, but Florence, if I don't control every detail, how do I know? I'll get what I want? And that's exactly the kind of thinking that's been blocking your good all along. That need to control is just fear wearing a business suit. When you try to control how your good comes to you, you're essentially telling the universe, I don't trust you to handle this. I know better than infinite intelligence. Do you see how absurd that is? It's like ordering a custom gown from the finest tailor in Paris and then breaking into their workshop at midnight to tell them which thread to use and how to hold the scissors. You wouldn't dream of doing that because you trust the master tailor knows their craft. Yet you do this very thing with the universe every single day. The truth is, the universe has methods and channels you haven't even thought of. It has connections you don't know exist. It has timing that's far more perfect than anything your limited perspective could orchestrate. When you try to force the how, you're actually limiting the infinite ways your good could reach you. You're closing doors before they even have a chance to open. I once knew a woman who needed exactly $3,000 for an urgent matter. She was convinced it could only come from her employer as a bonus. So she spent weeks trying to manipulate circumstances at work, politicking, doing extra projects, practically camping outside her boss's office. She was exhausted and anxious, and guess what? No bonus came. Finally, she let go. She simply said, "This money is mine by divine right. I release it to come through the perfect channel." 3 days later, an aunt she hadn't spoken to in years reached out about an old family property that had sold, and this woman's share was exactly $3,000. The money was always there, waiting, but her tight grip on the how had blocked the natural channel. This is what I mean by releasing control. You're not giving up, you're not being passive. You're actually stepping into a far more powerful position. You're aligning yourself with infinite intelligence instead of finite human planning. You're opening yourself to miracles instead of limiting yourself to logic. Let me tell you what happens when you make this shift. The woman who stops forcing and starts trusting doesn't become passive, she becomes magnetic. There's a difference between doing nothing and resting in faith while remaining alert to divine guidance. I knew a woman who had been frantically networking, sending hundreds of letters, making call after call, trying to secure a position. She was exhausted, depleted, and no closer to her goal. When she finally surrendered, she didn't stop acting, she stopped straining. She made a simple statement, "Infinite intelligence, you know where my perfect position is, and you know where I am. Bring us together now." Within a week, at a casual dinner she almost didn't attend, she sat next to someone who mentioned an opening that seemed designed specifically for her talents. She wasn't looking for it, she wasn't hustling for it. She was simply in the right place because she had released the tight grip of anxiety that had been blocking her path. This is what I mean by non-resistance. You're not fighting against what is. You're not pushing against closed doors until your hands bleed. You're trusting that when a door is meant to open for you, it will swing wide with ease. And here's something most people don't understand about manifestation. Your good can come through unexpected channels. When you're forcing and planning, you're usually watching one specific door, convinced that's the only way your demonstration can arrive. But infinite intelligence has a million doors you don't even know exist. The money you need might not come from the job you're fixated on. It might come from an unexpected refund, an old debt repaid, an inheritance you didn't know about, or an opportunity that hasn't even formed yet in the physical realm. The relationship you desire might not be with the person you're currently chasing. It might be with someone you haven't met yet, someone far more suited to you than your limited human judgment could have selected. This is why Jesus said to take no thought for your life. Not because your life doesn't matter, but because your anxious thinking limits what the divine can do for you. Every time you slip into worry, you're essentially saying, God, I don't think you're handling this right. Let me take over with my small, fearful human mind. And the moment you do that, the moment you try to micromanage the universe with your worry, you create what I call spiritual static. You jam the signal. Think of it this way. The divine is trying to broadcast the most magnificent solution to your life, but your mind is creating so much interference with its anxious chatter that you can't receive the transmission. I've watched people pray for prosperity while simultaneously obsessing over every bill, every expense, every perceived loss. They're essentially praying with one hand while pushing their good away with the other. It's like planting a seed and then digging it up every day to see if it's growing. Your constant examination, your relentless worry, disturbs the very soil in which your blessing is trying to take root. Here's what happens when you release the burden of anxiety. You create space. You become like a clear channel through which the divine can work. I knew a man who spent years agonizing over his career, making himself sick with endless planning and second-guessing. Every decision was torture. Every opportunity was analyzed to death. And nothing moved forward. His life was stagnant, not because opportunities weren't there, but because he was too paralyzed by overthinking to recognize them or act on them. One day, exhausted by his own mental gymnastics, he simply said, I surrender. Universe, you handle this. I clearly don't know what I'm doing. It wasn't defeat, it was wisdom. Within 3 weeks, a connection he'd made years ago, someone he'd completely forgotten about, reached out with an opportunity that transformed everything. The answer had been waiting in the wings the entire time, but his anxiety had kept the curtain closed. You see, the universe has a memory far better than yours. It knows every person you've ever met, every skill you've ever developed, every desire you've ever planted. It's connecting dots you can't even see yet, arranging circumstances beyond your comprehension. But it needs your cooperation, and cooperation doesn't mean worry. It means trust. When you release anxiety, you're not becoming passive or irresponsible. You're becoming receptive. You're opening a channel that worry blocks. Think of it this way. A clenched fist cannot receive. An open hand can. I once knew a woman who worried constantly about her adult son. He was struggling, making poor choices, drifting from job to job. She couldn't sleep. She called him daily with advice he didn't want. She sent money he didn't appreciate. Her worry was like a heavy fog around him, and he felt it. He pulled further away. One day, exhausted, she simply let go. Not with bitterness, but with love. She said, I place him in God's hands. I see him guided, protected, and fulfilled. She stopped the anxious calls. She stopped the rescue missions. And something remarkable happened. Within weeks, he called her, not because she'd been pushing, but because he wanted to. He'd found a mentor. He'd discovered a path that excited him. Her release had created space for his own divine guidance to reach him. Her worry had been static interference. Her trust was a clear signal. This is what it means to speak your word and then stand still. You don't speak your affirmation and then immediately start planning, scheming, forcing. You speak it and you rest in it. You water the seed, then you trust the soil. Does this mean you do nothing? Of course not. It means you take inspired action, not anxious action. Inspired action feels light, clear, almost effortless. Anxious action feels forced, heavy, driven by fear. You'll know the difference by how it feels in your body. When you speak from divine supply, you're not denying the physical situation. You're going to a higher court. You're appealing to the realm where all things are possible, where lack is an illusion, where every need already has its fulfillment prepared. I am not asking you to pretend you're wealthy when the bills are unpaid. I am asking you to stop empowering the appearance with your words and your focus. I am asking you to acknowledge a greater reality. Let me tell you what this looks like in practice. A woman once came to me and said, Florence, I speak the word, I affirm abundance, but then I open my bank account and the fear comes rushing back. What do I do with that? I said, you do not deny the bank account. You deny its power over your future. There is a difference. One is denial. The other is discernment. You can look at your bank account and say, "This is where I am," but not who I am. This is what has manifested, but not what must continue. You acknowledge the present without bowing to it. You observe the condition without giving it authority over tomorrow. This is the razor's edge we walk. We live in the world of form while knowing we are not confined by it. We participate in the physical while drawing from the invisible. And here is what happens when you hold this inner knowing. The physical begins to shift. Not because you pretended it away, but because you stopped feeding it with fear, stopped cementing it with your words, stopped binding yourself to it with your emotional agreement. The universe does not reward denial, but it does respond to faith. And faith is not belief without evidence. Faith is loyalty to the unseen good, even when the seen says otherwise. Now, let me be clear. This does not mean you sit and wait. Faith is not passivity. You still take action. You still do the work. You still make the calls, send the letters, follow the leading, but you do it from a different inner climate. You act not from desperation, but from direction. Not from lack, but from expectation. I have seen people take the same action twice, once from fear and once from faith, and get completely different results. Same action, different consciousness, different outcome. Why? Because the action is only the outer movement. The consciousness is the magnetic force that determines what the action attracts. When you act from fear, you carry the vibration of lack. You are energetically signaling scarcity, and so scarcity meets you. When you act from faith, from inner knowing, you carry the vibration of abundance. You are energetically aligned with supply, and so supply responds. There is a woman I knew who needed work desperately. Every day she would wake with anxiety, scanning advertisements, asking everyone she met if they knew of an opportunity. She spoke constantly of how difficult things were, how no one was hiring, how worried she was. And week after week, nothing came. Then one day, exhausted by her own fear, she stopped. She decided to speak only prosperity. She began to say, "My right work is now manifesting. The perfect opportunity is seeking me." She stopped discussing her lack. She stopped defending her anxiety to friends. She acted as if it were already done. Within 10 days, an opportunity arrived that exceeded what she had been struggling to find. It came through a chance encounter, someone who had heard she was available and needed exactly her skills. This is not coincidence. This is law. When you change your inner conversation, you change your outer experience. Your subconscious mind does not argue with you. It simply accepts what you impress upon it and sets about making it real. When you impress lack, it produces lack. When you impress abundance, it orchestrates abundance through ways you could never have planned. Many of you still believe that certain conditions must change before you can feel at peace. You think, when I have the money, then I will relax. When the relationship is secure, then I will stop worrying. But this is backward. You must relax first. You must claim the inner state first. The outer will always follow the inner, never the reverse. You cannot receive what you are not vibrationally ready to accept. A tense, anxious, doubtful mind is not a receptive mind. It is a closed fist. And you cannot receive anything with a closed fist. Open your hand. Open your consciousness. This is done through praise, through gratitude, through affirmation. When you say, "I give thanks that the infinite supply now manifests in my life," you are opening. You are aligning. You are tuning your instrument to the frequency of the thing you desire. And the universe, which is infinitely responsive, must answer in kind. This is why I say, watch your words as you would watch your children. They go out into the world and create. They build or they destroy. Every word is a seed. And here's what most people never realize. You're already speaking these seeds into existence every single day. You're not waiting for permission. You're not waiting for the right moment. Your words are already creating your reality right now, in this very moment. When you say, "I never have enough money," you're planting poverty. When you say, "I always get sick in winter," you're planting illness. When you say, "Nobody appreciates me," you're planting isolation. These aren't just complaints. These are commands to your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind is the most obedient servant you'll ever have. It never argues. It never questions. It simply says, "Your wish is my command," and it goes to work making your words come true. I've watched people talk themselves into disease. I've watched them talk themselves into poverty. I've watched them talk themselves into loneliness. And the tragic part? They have no idea they're doing it. They think they're just describing their reality, but they're actually creating it. They're the artist who keeps painting the same dark picture and wondering why their life feels so heavy. But here's the beautiful flip side. You can talk yourself into health. You can speak yourself into abundance. You can decree yourself into love and joy and success. The same power that works against you can work for you. The same law that brings defeat can bring victory. It's neutral. It's impartial. It simply responds to the seeds you plant. I knew a woman who changed her entire financial situation by changing one sentence. She used to say, "I can't afford it." Every time an opportunity came up, those 4 words, "I can't afford it." Her subconscious heard that as an identity, not a temporary condition. So it made sure she stayed in that identity. Then one day, she changed it. Instead of, "I can't afford it," she started saying, "That's not where I choose to invest right now." Same practical outcome in the moment, but completely different seed planted. One statement declared poverty as her identity. The other declared conscious choice and abundance as her reality. Within 6 months, her income had doubled. Not because the words themselves were magic, but because her consciousness shifted, and her consciousness creates her reality. Your word is your wand, but here's what most people miss. You cannot speak abundance while you feel poverty. You cannot declare health while you identify with sickness. This is the work beneath the words. This is where transformation actually happens. I once knew a woman who repeated affirmations for prosperity every morning. Yet when the bills arrived, she felt a knot in her stomach. When friends invited her to dinner, she calculated the cost with anxiety. Her mouth said one thing, but her consciousness lived in another. And consciousness always wins. The shift came when she stopped trying to convince herself and started excavating her beliefs. She asked, "Where did I learn that money was scarce? Who taught me I wasn't worthy of ease?" These weren't comfortable questions, but they were necessary ones. Because you cannot heal what you refuse to see. She discovered that her poverty consciousness came from watching her parents fight about money every night as a child. She had internalized the belief that money meant conflict, stress, suffering. So of course her subconscious kept her from having too much of it. It was trying to protect her from pain. Once she saw this pattern, she could release it. She began thanking money when it came and when it went. She blessed her bills as evidence that she had electricity, water, shelter. She stopped treating financial conversations like emergencies and started treating them like simple logistics. Her internal state changed, and her external reality followed. This is the work, not controlling circumstances, but transforming consciousness. Not manipulating the outer world, but aligning the inner one. Your life right now is a perfect printout of your dominant mental patterns. If you don't like what you see, the answer isn't out there. It's in here. In the stories you tell yourself. In the emotions you've normalized. In the identity you've been dragging around like old luggage. So let me be very clear about what happens when you finally let it go. You don't become someone else. You become more yourself than you've ever been. That thing you've been holding on to? That grudge? That old story? That identity built on what hurt you? It was never protecting you. It was just taking up space where something real could grow. I've watched people cling to their pain like it's a life raft when really, it's an anchor. They think if they let go of the story of what happened to them, they'll lose themselves. But here's the truth. You can't lose what you never were. You are not your trauma. You are not your mistakes. You are not the worst thing that ever happened to you or the worst thing you ever did. Every moment you spend identifying with those old patterns is a moment you're not available for what's trying to reach you right now. And I promise you, something is trying to reach you right now. But you won't see it while you're staring backward. You won't hear it while you're replaying old arguments. You won't feel it while you're numbed out on resentment and resignation. The universe is wildly generous, but it can't force feed you. It can only offer, and you have to have your hands open to receive. Think about the last time something wonderful happened that you didn't orchestrate. A connection that felt easy, an opportunity that just appeared, a moment of unexpected beauty or relief. What made that possible wasn't your control. It was your openness. And what blocks that openness? The weight you're still carrying, the story you keep telling, the identity you refuse to update. I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm asking you to stop letting it define what happens next. There's a difference between remembering and rehearsing, between honoring your experience and being imprisoned by it. You get to keep the wisdom. You get to keep the strength you built. You get to keep the lessons. But the bitterness, the self-righteousness, the need to be right about how wrong it all was, that's just ego, dressed up as self-protection. And when you let go of that righteousness, something miraculous happens. You stop carrying their story around like evidence at a trial. You stop rehearsing what they did. Stop cataloging every hurt. Stop building your case for why you deserve sympathy. Because here's what I know. The universe doesn't need your case. You don't have to prove you were wronged to be worthy of something better. You just have to stop giving your energy to the old story. I've watched people hold on to betrayal for years, decades even, thinking they're protecting themselves. But what they're really doing is staying energetically married to the person who hurt them. Every time you replay what happened, you're sending out the same signal. I'm still wounded. I'm still connected to this pain. I'm still defined by what they did to me. And the universe, in its perfect responsiveness, keeps reflecting that back to you. But the moment you truly decide that you're no longer available for that story, everything shifts. Not because they changed, not because they apologized or suddenly saw your worth, but because you stopped making their actions mean something about you. You stopped letting someone else's capacity determine your value. And I need you to hear this clearly. Your value was never up for debate. Not then, not now, not ever. What happened to you was never evidence of your unworthiness. It was evidence of where they were, what they could see, how much they'd healed or hadn't healed themselves. Their blindness to your light doesn't make you less luminous. It just means they were looking the other way. So when you forgive, you're not saying what they did was acceptable. You're not signing off on the harm or pretending it didn't matter. You're simply saying, I will no longer organize my entire existence around this wound. I will no longer let this be the lens through which I see myself, my life, my future. You're taking back your authorship. You're remembering that you're not the character in someone else's mess. You're the creator of your own story. And in this story, you get to decide what you're available for, what you call in, what you become. And the wildest part? When you shift this internally, when you stop making yourself small, stop rehearsing disaster, stop carrying other people's chaos like it's your responsibility, the external world doesn't fight back. It rearranges itself. Because you were the one holding the old pattern in place. You were the one saying yes when you meant no. You were the one staying in conversations that drained you, relationships that diminished you, situations that required you to betray yourself just to belong. The moment you stop participating in that, the universe rushes in to meet your new standard. Not because you forced anything, not because you manipulated or controlled, but because you finally aligned your inner world with the truth of who you are. And the universe only responds to what you are, not what you pretend to be. This is where people get confused. They think manifesting is about visualizing harder, affirming louder, doing more rituals. But all of that is just noise if you're still internally available for the thing you say you don't want. If you're still bracing for betrayal, you'll call it in. If you're still dim your light so others feel comfortable, you'll magnetize people who need you small. If you're still whispering your desires like they're too much to ask for, the universe will treat them as optional. Your inner conversation is the blueprint. Your assumptions are the architecture. And every single external experience is just a reflection of what you've been silently agreeing to. So when you change the agreement, when you say, I am no longer available for this version of reality, everything shifts. Not someday, not when you're perfect, right now, in this moment, because you decided. And that decision doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't need an announcement. It just has to be true. You don't need to convince anyone, defend it, or explain yourself into exhaustion. You just start moving as the person who already lives in that reality. You start speaking to yourself the way that version of you would. You start making choices from that place. Small ones at first, then bigger ones. And before long, you realize you're not faking it anymore. You've become it.